faced with this or subjecting the country to this kind of challenge we're going through now. I mean, you have so many others. But the question also is, just as we see it consistently coming through, yes, you say they could not have gone to the National Assembly without some form of invitation. Do you think it was a good idea to have even invited them to come on in the first place, seeing how heated the matter was and that they had just recently just left the president and the BOT and all the other leaders saying the next one should be October 7, and then you proceed to the National Assembly?
Well, to a very large extent, and I'm saying this with every sense of responsibility, PDP has become completely overwhelming, and a very heavy burden on the Nigerian political space, such that you can also begin to wonder what was the rationale behind that visit. If a legislative body or the legislative arm of government is reconvening after a long period of holiday, to what extent would you prioritize the visit of a factional leader of a party against the backdrop of very serious legislative demands, including the crisis we're having with the budgets, for instance, which to a large extent underscores whether you move forward economically or not? How about the emergency of the perennial and continuing ASU strike? What are you doing about the spate of kidnapping that has now become a daily occurrence? So much so that we have, in frustration, had people, respectable persons, suggest that we should grant amnesty to kidnappers. What are you doing regarding the health sector, and so on and so forth?
If you let me just interrupt you there a minute, perhaps there's a new twist or a new development for us, for instance, that can actually help you expose more on this. We understand that the lady, Binta Masi Garba, is not a member of the Assembly. She was a former member of the Assembly. So she's not a serving member of the Assembly. But the man she fought is a serving member of the Assembly. So now if we're talking about immunity and non-immunity, it's like an outsider coming to the Assembly to assault representatives.
Well, to sound comical about that is to say, well, I think once you approach that hallowed, in quote now, chambers of the National Assembly, you are immediately caught with the spirit of violence. But the thing is that I think you also will appreciate that once you get there, you also understand part of the rules. Part of the rules also includes physical capacity to push forward whatever you are saying. And no longer the force of logic that makes debate and parliamentary activities not just robust, but very, very interesting. The fact that she was a former member also explains it us. That, well, she had been effectively indoctrinated. She understands the language. And these are some of the members, the overpopulated members of the National Assembly, that you probably have not heard about their input, regarding any debate or whatever. This is with due respect to her. I am not too familiar with that personage. But the truth is that what plays out these days clearly tells the ordinary Nigerian that we are on our own. You simply would need perhaps a fundamental shake-up to begin to redirect the attitude of our people and the disposition of our elected members to deal with the concern of the Nigerian people. I like to land this way. Even the Baraje visit and the whole, I had the privilege of putting up an article immediately that thing happened, both on the 30th of August. And the title of that article was PDP's implosion, Nigeria's greatest dividend of raw power play. You ask me, why is this whole thing not just a PDP family affair, as they want to always put it? How much of the Nigerian question and concerns reflects in the demand of this splinter group? Issues like recall of Governor Amechi, questions like we should not be prosecuted by EFCC. They should stop the investigation of our financial impropriety. Issues like Tuko must leave. And so where are the questions, the very, very crying questions that we are faced with? Where is the issue of creation of job? What of the collapse of the educational institution as reflected in the continuing strike action?
So you said the demands are selfish?
I mean, they are misplacement of priorities. They don't concern us. They completely alienated from the concern of the Nigerian people.
Isn't that why they have maintained that it's strictly a family affair?
As a matter of fact, and this is partly agreeing with you, what actually happens is that you have, don't mind my language, these are capoons of the buccaneering group who understands that the language is that you must raise the stakes now. The issues of threat and blackmail must play out in each full throttle. And then you must find a way of sustaining that heat such that when the price is right, they will all come back. That was why, immediately after the breakout, the next day, 4 out of the 7 governors were at the presidential villa for a reconciliatory meeting. As of 2 days ago, this time around, led by, we all saw the Niger State governor reading out the progress meeting. You had more than 7. There were 8 governors. And so that will tell you what is going on. That there is no, after all, why is their name not any other thing other than New PDP?
So you think you should have left the party?
It is because they intend to come back. You only need to give these people the language that they understand. That's all.
What can we say about the political temperament of, say, the president or the executive arm of government in all of this? Because in the wake of all these developments, you still have to keep calm and ensure that, look, governance doesn't suffer. Because at the end of the day, it is the purpose of governance. That's what the people put you there in the first place.
Well, I'm not too sure. I'm actually in two minds whether to credit the presidency with all the sagacity, the maturity required to deal with this kind of situation. On the one hand, I see, but that is not too different from the person of Goodluck, President Goodluck Jonathan. He is meek. He has a disposition that speaks to peace. That is the perception. He has an attitude that, don't move towards rocking the boat. He's a listening president.
Is that what you see apparently? Because some people
no, I was one of those. I'm from Delta State, but I was one of those who was very vocal against the election of President Jonathan. Because, like I did say on air here, that I trekked with my wife from Festac to Surere to vote against him, even if we knew he would win. Now, what I meant by that is that I had tried to understand this man even before the election. And we have, golden opportunity to do that assessment. He was once a teacher. He was once a deputy director in Ompadek. He was once a lecturer in Uniport, very briefly. He was also a deputy governor. He was a governor. He was a vice president. He was an acting president. If he had vibes to turn around the fortunes of this country, we would have known. And so when you credit him with peaceful disposition in times of turbulent moments, no. I remember Chief Ganifa used to tell us, yes, we need peace, but we don't want the peace of poverty. Neither do we want the stability of starvation.
The reason I'm asking that, you've talked about his mien, as it were, a lot about his bearing, which a lot of people will agree with you was correct. But some people will say that do not mistake that meekness, for being stupid or for weakness.
You could.
And that underneath all of that, there's a steely resolve. So I'm asking you, is it from what you have seen in terms of his apparent carriage or behavior or the way even he speaks? Or is it something that he's done that you're using to, the way he's handled certain situations that makes you think that, you know, that is his